Irrational, we had the privilege of working with just hundreds of organizations, everyone from Google to Walmart, tiny startups to big companies, to bring behavioral design to life. And we keep seeing the same mistakes over and over again. And it sparked a really interesting discussion, or what are the sins that we are committing in AI product design? So today we're going to tell you about them.
The 7 deadly sins of AI product design. So let's start with the first one without further ado. Neglect. When AI products offer no scaffolding, no guidance, no cues, they trigger avoidance, not action. So when we neglect users, we force them to carry this entire cognitive burden of figuring out what's the tool's purpose, how do you use it, and it often leads them to give up before even trying. So neglect is that blank canvas problem. You open a powerful tool like Google's Gemini, and it just stares back at you. This is like inviting someone to your house for dinner, opening the door, pointing to the kitchen and saying, make yourself something, but no recipes, no ingredients, just figure it out. The cognitive load is massive for a new user. And so if users are paralyzed asking, what can I even do? They're not using your products. So the antidote to that is to provide scaffolds. Lower the activation effort. Figma and OpenAI don't just give you a blank page, they give you a rolling prompt example or starter ideas. And so they lower that threshold for that first action. You can also scaffold with interactive walkthroughs. So ClickUp doesn't just tell you about a new feature, it literally guides you through it step by step. Notion's also really good at doing this. You can also scaffold with inspiration. So if any of you have tried OpenAI Sora, what makes it easy to use is that not only do you see the images, you also see the prompt that created it. And Sora invites you to remix and copy that prompt. This turns a static output into an entry point for exploration. And finally, you can refer to past behavior. Headspace remembers your last conversation. It feels personal. It lowers the friction to re-engagement because it shows that the AI knows you. Now, on to our second sin, obscurity.
So obscurity is really the cousin of neglect. So where neglect is kind of just leaving you abandoned, obscurity is hiding in plain sight. So all the features are there, but you can't access them. Can anyone tell me the name of Amazon's AI feature? Amazon's investing billions of dollars in AI. Surely this must be easy to find and top of mind. But there it is in the top left, not even very clear that it's clickable, very small icon, and it really violates everything we know about human attention. And I think what it's really telling me is Amazon doesn't want it to stand a chance. Maybe they don't want people to find their AI features. I think Notion, as good as it is with some of its AI features, also does a poor job of this. So here you can see very tiny in this grayed out space that you can use a space for AI in the middle of its contextual cues. The AI feature is really powerful, but discoverability here is really, really weak. And we know that people have limited attention. This is a research spotlight that supports the marketing rule of thumb that when a user sees something, they need to be able to decide what they want it in 3 seconds or less. And so to grab that attention, we really need to be strategic about what we place on the screen and what we leave off the screen. So for example, in this company Amplitude found that removing some things from the top bar increased that activation by 5%. So it's not just obscurity in the sense of taking things away, but oftentimes people are obscuring by putting too much in. So what's the antidote to obscurity? So the first one is to use novelty cues to pique interest. This is an example of Copilot. They do a really good job of giving me a clear sense, a clear mental model of what each model does. We also might want to make AI options visually salient. So Canvas in ChatGPT, even Artifacts in Claude does this really well, where they kind of separate the two functions. Commands are going to go on the left, and then editing on the right. It's a really clear, mentally easy process to think about. And then the last antidote to obscurity is to meet users where they already are. So Grammarly doesn't make you hunt for that AI, unlike Rufus for Amazon. It really places that generative AI button right next to that very familiar suggestions button that you're all looking for and that you expect. So again, the opposite, maybe the opposite of neglect and obscurity is gluttony, which is overwhelming users with way too many choices, right? This is going to lead to choice paralysis, confusion, and ultimately churn. And this is really supported by research. We see that we think that often that more choice is better, but we actually see that that's not true. Schwartz made this very famous in his book on the paradox of choice, but even a small increase in option, like going from 3 Wi-Fi plans to choose from to 4, can drastically increase the amount of people that churn. So who's guilty of gluttony here? I think ChatGPT is by far one of the worst here. They have so many models to choose from, and the models are all very, very similarly named. Even worse, the little contextual tips underneath aren't helpful at all. And the names themselves are crazy. The thought that you would name something 4.0 and 04 at the same time and expect people to use it differently, it boggles my mind. Google AI Studio is another good example of this. I'll give them a tiny bit of grace because they are meant to be used for power users and to tinker and play with. But even then, as a power user myself, it feels like you're walking into a pilot's cockpit. So what's the antidote to gluttony? How do we make sure that people aren't overwhelmed by all these features? So the first one is very simple, subtraction. Reduce the number of choices. I think Claude does a really nice job here. When you click in, it offers two choices, really the big model or the fast model. It curates that for you and it makes it really clear what to do. Again, Copilot, I think, also does a nice job of this. Instead of showing everything to everyone all at once, just give someone the next thing. Let them discover the next thing. So here it's telling me that I might want to try the extended thinking model now. And instead of just putting that in my face in that long list of models that exist. And then finally, ChatGPT does this really well of chunking information. This is their deep research. This is the product. And what they do really nicely here is they put the citations in line right next to the actual text. It makes it easy to understand and it's not overwhelming.
Our fourth sin, and perhaps the most disappointing one, at least for me, mediocrity. This is about violating user expectations. Behaviorally, that's worse than doing nothing at all, because when expectations are high and unmet, it creates a pain response. We see this in the research. People don't stick with digital tools just because they're useful. They stay when the tool actually meets or exceeds their expectation. So one study found that when expectations were confirmed, users were twice as likely to continue with the product. And when often AI hallucinates or you're confused with the output, you feel a sense of frustration and anger. A notorious example of this is Apple. They framed its delayed AI launch as a generational leap, but what users got, in fact, felt underwhelming. One of the most heavily advertised features was Genmoji, a novelty that felt a little more like a fun add-on than a core AI breakthrough. Meanwhile, key areas like Siri were left untouched, leaving users confused about the true value. This last one stings a little bit more because it's Google. So Google Slides promises the generative AI in presentations. So when you're working on a deck about AI and you ask it to create a new slide and it suggests the best outdoor activities in San Francisco, you're left not knowing whether you should laugh or cry. And this is one of the bigger dangers when there's brand-based expectation inflation. So the more credibility a product has, the harsher the judgment when it underdelivers. So what's the antidote here? Increase operational transparency. So Replit AI does a good job of this. When it runs into an issue, it acknowledges the issue. It says, I see it, and it understands why it failed. After that, it shows the transparent steps it's taking to fix it, and it allows the user to even co-work with the agent to fix the mistakes. This leads to a fascinating paradox. We actually rate AI as higher quality when we can see a mistake and we feel empowered to act on it. So it's better than seeing no mistake at all. It makes us feel smart and control. So invite structured feedback. GitHub Copilot lets users flag bad suggestions with both a quick thumbs up and thumbs down, as well as a detailed structured form. So it empowers users to be part of that quality control process. And finally, just be honest. Research shows that when chatbots disclose both their capabilities and their limitations, we find them to be more authentic and more willing to interact. And so a final antidote is to humanize AI's mistakes. Gemini puts it right there on the screen that Gemini can make mistakes, so double check it. The simple act of humility builds trust and it empowers the user.
So Sim 5 is vanity. It's all about flaunting the label and not the value. So assuming the mere presence or label of AI will inherently sell that product or captivate the users without really actually thinking about what are the benefits or the proven user value. This really just ignores the evidence that simply labeling things as AI will do anything at all. And so this is the funniest example that we found where Samsung is literally AI washing the space by calling bespoke AI on their washing machine, but it says nothing. It's a new ad. It's interesting maybe, but what does it do? It's just selling this label, not the value in any way at all. Again, I think Instagram, WhatsApp does the same. They're really putting AI just in their search bar for no apparent reason. It feels like a feature that's just kind of tacked on because they had to. We know that tacking features or tacking labels on as AI doesn't work. This is a study that we ran at Irrational Labs with nearly 800 users, and we found that willingness to pay was exactly the same whether you added AI or not. So if you're going to invest all this money in AI features just because you want to put the label on it, please don't. People are not going to be willing to pay more for it. The label doesn't sell. So what's the antidote to this? What's the antidote to vanity is just having a bit more substance. So frame features around user outcomes rather than the label. So Superhuman does a really nice job of this. Save 4 hours per person every single week. That is a great value proposition. They could have said just email with AI or even supercharge your email with AI, but instead they tell you exactly what you're going to get. Loom does a very similar thing, right? So these have Loom AI, but it tells you exactly on the right, we have auto summaries, auto chapters, auto tasks, filler word removal, and silence removal. These are things that are very useful to me as a user potentially. And then finally, with price for value, not for AI. So up above, Slack does a nice job. This is very similar to Superhuman, where it says save your team 97 minutes. Don't buy the AI feature just because it's AI. Buy it because it will save your team time. And I really like what Intercom is doing down below with their own AI agent, where they actually are charging 99 cents per AI resolution. So this is really putting your money where your mouth is. We only get paid when our AI does something that is valuable to you. The next and penultimate sin here is tyranny. It's when AI becomes the dictator instead of the assistant. It really strips away user agency and makes decisions kind of without your consent. It's forcing users into workflows without sufficient agency, transparency, or the ability to undo, override, or opt out. So Claude is the most guilty of this, where when it just cuts you out of its service by just saying, okay, your usage limit is reached, it'll reset at some time in the future. Here, when I was working, it was 3 hours in the future, and it didn't even tell me I was going to run up against a limit. No warning. It just says come back later. It's like when you're driving a car on the highway and it'll just say, oh, I'm done. And you run out of gas. And what I'm going to do and what I did is I turned off to another LLM competitor. That's a horrible experience if you're thinking about from a Claude user retention perspective. So don't do that. Don't strip away user agency. Another example here is InstaSize, which is a photo editing app. Whenever you upload a photo that isn't in their recommended orientation, they will just start generatively filling the rest of the photo, even if you didn't want to do that at all. It's a really classic case of just like overreach. They're forcing you through a workflow that you might not want just yet. So what do you do with tyranny? What is the antidote to it? So the first one obviously is giving user more control. So Otter AI does a really nice job of this. They have a nice user interface that helps you understand exactly when this otter is joining meetings and when it's not, and for whom and for not. Enhansive AI does a really nice job of this, where it allows you to accept or reject or change the output. Grammarly does this as well, where it's letting you compare and puts you in the driver's seat of what you want to do. Finally, Canva's AI feature does a really nice job of enabling users to revert easily. So maybe it's doing it, but it can undo it really easily as well.
This brings us to our final sin, which is envy. This is our tendency to copy competitors' AI product designs, features, user interface patterns. This has led to the sea of sameness in a market where we really need some more distinctness and some innovation to cater to users' unique needs. Sociologists call this mimetic copying. So when companies feel uncertain, they don't innovate, they imitate. And this creates a system where all products become increasingly similar and real user needs are ignored and innovation slows to a crawl. So this one, we really only need one example because it's quite clear. Everything looks the same sidebars, the same chat interfaces, the same openings. There's really no distinct identity and everyone is just copying everyone else. So one way out of this is to foster community and curiosity. According to George Lowenstein, curiosity is triggered when we notice a gap between what we know and what we want to know. So if there's no gap, we're typically bored. And if the gap is too big, we shut down. But when it's just right, we tend to lean in. And that's the curiosity zone. And great AI design lives right there, where the interface invites exploration, brings people together, reveals new possibilities, and offers just enough mystery to pull us forward. So we've ripped on Google a lot today, but they have really been breaking the pattern in some of their new designs. So Google Whisk disrupts the standard text prompt with a modular visual input for subject, scene, and style. And second, they've also created innovative possibilities. So Notebook LM, which I love, has created such a buzz of curiosity by letting users turn written content into podcasts. This is such a novel and fun way to learn, and it really breaks the mold of the standard chat interface. And finally, Dia's browser browser embeds an LLM directly into your browser, so users can chat with any of the tabs that they have open, and it's a really cool way of adding context into an LLM. So there you have it, the 7 deadly sins of product design.
I think these are 7 sins that you should look at in your own day-to-day work, look at within your product. And if you ever want help, we're here to help you think about great product and great product design. Make sure that you are absolved of your sins.